Hi, friends! Welcome back to my channel, Wine, Waits, and Crafty Creates. If this is your first time visiting, thanks for stopping by. I hope you'll enjoy this video and subscribe. Today I am bringing you 10, yes, you heard that right, 10 DIYs from the very popular and gorgeous Dollar Tree calendars. I'm also going to be announcing a giveaway in this video, so I hope you'll watch it all. I hope you'll be inspired, and I hope you will be excited to go make some DIYs out of those 2021 Dollar Tree calendars. Let me know what you think in the comments. Here we go. So this first DIY, I'm going to be using this love sign I still had left over from Valentine's Day and the pumpkin patch sign. This is going to be a very simple DIY. So in this one, I am actually using a glue stick instead of Mod Podge. These calendar pages are very thin, and I discovered that they can be very sensitive. They can tear easily, and a glue stick actually works pretty easy on them. So you'll see me using a glue stick in some of these DIYs and Mod Podge in some of these DIYs. But if you are using Mod Podge, just be warned, be very careful and don't pull too much or you may tear your calendar page. So I glued my pumpkin patch sign onto, I glued the pumpkin patch calendar page onto the back of this sign, which is pretty easy. And then I'm just sanding off the edges so that way they will be nice and smooth and not rough around the edges versus if I would have just tried to cut it myself. I picked up the trick of using that little pan from A Little Bit of Calm and Crazy. It really keeps dust from getting all over my craft room, so I like using that for when I'm sanding. So next I just used some twine to put a little hanger on the top back to the sign so that way we can hang it up. And then I grabbed some ribbon I picked up from Dollar Tree this year, the adorable pumpkin ribbon, the red truck ribbon, and just some orange ribbon. And we're going to make a bow for the top of the sign. So the method I'm doing for this bow is basically just taking a bunch of ribbon and making them in the loopy bow shape but they won't have the end on the bottom of it. So I'm just going to take each strand of ribbon and make a bunch of the loops out of it that you would see in a traditional bow. I will bend it sometimes just to make sure I am actually holding it in the middle so that way they're the same length on both sides. And then I am just going to do that with all of the different colors that I'm mixing, and I'm just going to have them all attached to each other in a sorted way. There's no mean to the madness. I'm just having them all together. Once I have them all together, then I'm going to take another piece of the twine that I cut, and I'm just going to tie it right in the middle to hold them all together. Again, you can tell that there are no bottom pieces, no tail pieces to my bow. This is just the fluffy bow center part. I'm not sure what you call that or if there's an official term, but I'm just tying all those together. Now I'm taking a couple pieces that I that I cut the same length, and I'm just tying it to the center of that bow piece. So these are going to be like the little tails to a bow that you would have on any standard bow. And just tying it on there so it'll be nice and tight and not fall off. And then I always typically cut the strands the same length, and then I cut the legs to the bow once I have it in place and I know exactly how long I want it. There have been too many times I've cut the little leg part to the bow too short for the particular item I was using it on. So now I just wait and I cut it off once I have it in place and I know exactly how long I want it to be. So I'm just going to tie this bow actually to the twine that I connected to the sign that's going to be able to hold my sign on the wall. I'm going to leave a little loop at the top so that can be actually what I hang it up with. So I do know this is probably a little bit longer than most traditional DIY videos out there, but I really wanted to bring you a lot of options for these calendar pages. There are so many different pages. And if you have more than one of the calendars like I do, you want to be able to use a lot of them, but you obviously don't want them all to look the same. You don't want them all to be in a picture frame. You can only have so many pictures on the wall, but you don't want them all to look like this sign. This is super cute for the pumpkin sign, and I loved how it turned out because I can actually even hang it on a little ladder or anywhere like that. But I wanted different options. I wanted to be able to give you all different options so that way you can do multiple different things and so that way you can pick what you like the most, and that can be what you do with the calendar pages that you like the most. So this DIY in particular was very simple, but it's cute. It's a simple way to really be able to use one of these pages, and I was really happy with how it turned out. So the next one we are going to use is this little honeybee. I think this is adorable. And we are going to use this mason jar wall hanging that I got from the Dollar Tree this fall. And we are going to make just an adorable piece out of this. This was actually my favorite for the longest time until I got to another one that you'll see. Now I'm torn. I don't know. I still really love this one. I loved how it turned out. So you're just going to want to take the little hanger that came on the sign off. And I do want to make sure I do the front and back of a lot of these projects. I don't know if I'm going to keep them. And if I give them away to somebody, I do want to make sure they're a full finished product like you would see in the store. I don't want it to look like something that was a DIY. And when you turn it around, you can see what the original sign was. So on a lot of these, you are going to see me adding either felt or most likely scrapbook paper to the back so that way it's just totally finished. So you're just going to take the mason jar, set it down, trace around it, and then cut around it so that way you get the exact size and shape that you need to be able to stick on. Again, on this one, I am using the glue stick again. I just wanted to make sure there was no peeling when I did this one. So, like I said, you're going to see me use a little bit of both, but on this one, I did use the glue stick, and I put glue. You can't see it, but I did put it on the back of the calendar, and I was just really making sure I got around the edges of the mason jar because I don't want my edges to peel up. So just make sure you do get a lot of glue around the edges of your mason jar. And so here I'm just going to take one of these black pieces of scrapbook paper that I actually got from the Dollar Tree. I've only seen these at a Dollar Tree once out of all the Dollar Trees I've ever been to. So I did snag up a couple packs of them, and I'm using just a regular black sheet to cover the back of this mason jar. also didn't take off the original burlap that was on the top part of the original side. I figured I might as well leave that on there, and it might as well have that burlap around the front and back. If anything, it just helps it even have just further of that finished look. So I did not take that off. I have plenty of burlap to be able to use a new piece on the front. So now I'm just going to take a piece of burlap that I have, and I am going to lay it down, trace around it so that way I can get the exact size that I need, and glue it in place on the new front side to my mason jar. Now, you will see I traced around it with an ink pen, and I don't know, I pick it up and I go to cut it, and I literally could not see my lines. The ink pen just did not write on it very well. So I grab a marker that I have on my desk, and I retraced around it with the marker, and then I was able to see it so that way I could cut it out. And to put the burlap in place, I am going to be using Mod Podge. I just feel like it holds something thicker, like the burlap, a lot better than what just the glue was going to hold it. And since burlap is thick, I obviously don't have to worry about any tearing or anything of that nature. So it ended up not being a big deal at all. You just don't worry about putting too much Mod Podge on there. You are going to use quite a bit to be able to hold it down. So I just put quite a bit on there, and then I did want to cover the top because, again, I don't want this going anywhere. Someone may have it in a kitchen. If I keep it for myself, it's probably going to be in my kitchen. If I give it away, it may be in someone's kitchen. So I just want to make sure if there's even moisture or anything like that in the air that it stays on and it don't peel up for somebody. So you're going to see me really put a good amount of Mod Podge on this burlap to hold it in place. And then once it was dry, I just put the hanger that came on the original sign back on the top. And now I am going to take some twine and put it where the burlap, the top of that mason jar meets the jar itself, and just wrap it around there a few times. A little hot glue to the back to hold the piece down as you get it started, and then twist it around a couple times. Now, I don't want it on top of each other. I want it to kind of be out a little bit. So I just make sure I did that. And then I glued down the back piece that I cut off just to make sure it stays put and don't go anywhere. Then I'm going to take that same twine again, and I'm going to make a little bow. And the way I'm making my bow this time with twine is I just wrap it around my fingers as thick as I want the bow. So this time I did like 4 or 5 times. And then I just tie a knot around the center of the bow to hold it in place. Then I just cut off the excess edges, make sure the 2 little legs hang down, and then I am just going to glue it in place onto the corner of where my twine is on the mason jar. I did want to add a little pop of color, and I thought these little sunflowers that I picked up from the Dollar Tree were perfect because we know those bees like sunflowers, and it's going to add some color. So I'm going to just hot glue this right to the center of that twine bow that I created. So the whole time I was adding these finishing touches, I was looking at it, asking myself, is there anything else I want to do to the edges? And I decided that I did. I just wanted this to be perfect. I thought it was so darn cute. I just wanted to make sure it was absolutely perfect because it was already looking perfect to me. So I sanded down the edges just to make sure the papers were perfectly smooth. And then I took my Waverly chalk paint in hazelnut. I don't really use that color very often, but it actually did blend in and look perfect with the little distressing that was already on this sign. So when I just distressed the edges very slightly, very little bit, it blended in absolutely, positively perfect with the distressing that was already on this calendar page. And I absolutely love it. Like I told you, this was my favorite one for a long time. So this next one, using this Peace on Earth Christmas page from the calendar, is probably one of the easier ones or easiest ones we're going to be doing. So I had this picture frame that I also picked up from the Dollar Tree. And originally I thought, well, I'll just take the backing off. I'll just make sure I cut my calendar page down to size to the insert. And I discovered that you could see that wording. It was just a little too dark. The home is wherever I'm with you. So I was going to have to color it. Now I'm very low, not color it, paint it. I am very low on my chalk paint in white. So I did just grab my acrylic paint. It's not like I need to worry about the scratching or holding up. It's literally just going to be the backing of this paper. So I had to give it 3 coats because acrylic paint don't cover very well. But I gave it 3 coats, let it dry. And then I'm just going to cut out the size I need of my calendar page so that way my picture can fit perfectly right on this. So again, once I got to this point, I was expecting just to stick the calendar page in there, put my backing on, and voila. But because there's no glass cover to this picture, it was not holding down very well. It was bubbling, as you can kind of see here. So I was not happy with that. So I did decide to glue down the calendar page to the board. Um, and again, this project still took me maybe 5 minutes. It was a super quick, easy project. I thought about adding some flowers to it and I decided against it. That way, if I wanted to change anything down the road, there were no flowers that were hot glued to the frame or anything like that. And it's just an extra, very simple. This is especially for people who like things simple. Um, the page is so pretty in itself, you don't have to add a lot to it. So this is one of the few projects that I'm simply going to be using as just a regular picture. So for our next one, we are going to use this Believe in the Good page from the calendar. And then I'm going to use this sign that I picked up this fall for Thanksgiving from the Dollar Tree. Now, I will say when I got done with this one, man, I really loved it too. So it was a hard choice between which one I liked better at this point. So I was really happy with how this one turned out. You'll have to let me know what you think about it as well. But again, we're just going to go through the same process. So I'm not going to necessarily talk you all through it. Just make sure you remove the little hanging twine that comes on the sign to hang it up because we will reuse that to hang it back up. trace around the sign, and on you'll be tracing around the sign on the scrapbook paper to cover the back, and you will be tracing around the sign on the calendar page to be able to cover the front and back of the sign. I am going to pop in here to give you a little tip to make sure when you are tracing around the sign, you are sticking the sign on top of whatever you are tracing it on. So we right now we're getting ready to trace out the calendar page. And it is going to go on the back side to the original sign. So we're going to have the back side on top of the calendar when we cut it out. I didn't do that on the back side. I had it flipped, and so it didn't cover perfectly. So just make sure the side that the page is going to get glued down on is the side that is up when you do your tracing. There's your daily tip for you. Then I did take my Waverly chalk paint in the color truffle and I painted around all the outer edges because you are going to be able to see some of it and I wanted it to blend in with the picture. That truffle paint really looked good with the browns that were on this picture. And then this one I am using Mod Podge. It held it down really well and did a good job. I was able to smooth it out really well. And then I just took some twine and this garland, this bead garland, and then, of course, my sanding block. So the first thing I did was sand down all the edges. After I had all the edges sanded down nice and smooth, I took the twine on the bottom where the sign meets the paper and on the top where the sign meets the calendar page. And I just wrapped the twine around. Not perfectly to where it's all stacked on each other, obviously, but like you see here. And made sure I pulled the little hanging tab through that I'm going to be using to hang up my sign. Don't worry, you do see that I have it on backwards, but that's okay because I'm going to change it here in a minute. And then I did add that beautiful bead garlanded as well. I just thought it looked so pretty with the sign. I don't know, I just thought it all went together perfectly. And then I have this bag of beads that I picked up from Amazon. And this is where I switch my hanger around. I knew I was going to be taking it off to add the beads anyways. So I pulled out one side and added those beads to the little hanging piece to this sign. Then I am going to take my truffle paint in Waverly and I am going to dry brush the edges very lightly. I don't want a lot, but this picture kind of has a little bit of that distressed look anyways, and truffle really did blend in very well with it. I was just amazed on how these colors blended in so well with these calendar pages. It was just amazing to me. And it just ended up looking really well. But truffle just matched the color almost perfectly that you see here. This first piece I'm pointing to is the actual calendar, and then that is what I'm doing myself. So it looks identical when you dry brush it very lightly. And I love this piece. I absolutely love how this one turned out. Woo, we are going right through these, y'all. So next I'm going to use this Happy Halloween sign. I'm going to bend it apart and I'm going to cut it down at all the creases. It cuts off so perfectly. And I'm just going to take the little hanger that was on the back of it and I'm just going to tear it off. I literally was able to pull it right off. And originally I had planned on using this to frame out this moon page. I do change this because after I get my frame all together that I made out of the pieces I cut off from that Halloween sign, it was just too much black, too dark. I don't know. Or something with the polka dots, with the flowers, just looked horrible together. Did not look well at all. So I'm just going to lay out the pieces that I did cut off from two of those Halloween signs. It did take two in order to have four pieces for all sides for me to make this frame. And I'm just going to line them up so that way I know exactly where I need to make sure I cut them. Now, you will see a lot of people that just put them with the straight edges and it looks like a frame and it looks perfectly fine. I tend to like mine angled like an actual picture frame. So that's just what I did here. I took my razor knife and I just cut the edges so that way they would be angled and go together perfectly like a regular picture frame would. Then I did glue all the pieces together. What I did was I just put a little dab of hot glue where the corners meet. You can't put a lot or it's going to come through. But I wanted to make sure this was really held and wasn't going to fall apart. And since you can't put too much glue that way, I did take some little popsicle sticks, cut them in half, and glued them down really well. Now, I used a lot of hot glue to be able to glue them down where the corners meet on the back of my picture frame. So this will really help my sign be sturdy. It'll help it stay together. I won't have to worry about it pulling apart. Once I have it all together, that piece that I took off the back of the Halloween sign that you can use to hang up a sign, I'm actually going to glue that back onto the back of this sign. This way, if I decide I want to hang it up, I actually have something on there without having to have a piece of twine or anything like that. Once you see the color, the page I went with from the calendar, you will see I didn't really want twine or anything like that to be showing. So I thought this would be perfect. If I want to have it standing up, I can, or if I want to hang it up, I can do that as well. At least I know I have the option once I put this on. And then I grabbed the calendar that I got from the Dollar Tree that is in wine. And there were a couple pages. I did think that wine knot page looked really good, but I decided to go with the rose all day. I just thought it looked better, and there was something about that pink that popped out behind the black sign. So I thought it looked really well. So that is what I went with. And I did glue it down to a piece of poster board that I picked up from the Dollar Tree that I already had on hand. So that way it wasn't flimsy, that way you couldn't see it bubbling or anything like that. Somehow I lost the footage of that, but I did glue it down to a piece of poster board. And then I'm just going to glue the poster board once I make sure it's level and it's not crooked and nothing's out of place. I am going to glue the poster board just around the edges where you can't see it to my frame so that way the picture will stay in place. So honestly, another very simple piece that is going to look great in my wine kitchen. Okay, so this next DIY, we're going to use this very 4th of July looking um, calendar page, a pizza pan I got from the Dollar Tree, and some beads I got from Walmart. The first thing we're going to do is spray paint our pan in the spray paint, a blue color that I had gotten from Walmart. And then I'm taking Mod Podge and I'm going around all the edges to my pizza pan because I don't want there to be any chipping or anything of that nature. The only reason I didn't do the whole pan is because obviously the whole inside of the pizza sheet is going to be covered with my calendar, so it'll get Mod Podge for that anyways. Y'all, this is my very first ever pizza pan DIY craft. Very first ever. I know people have been doing them for a while. I've never done one, and I don't know, there was something about this look that I thought this is going to look good on. So I'm really excited about this one. It's in my top. It's in my top 5. I absolutely love how it turned out. So you're just sticking your calendar sheet in your pizza sheet. And then I just used my X-Acto knife to cut around the edges. I'm not worried about the edges because they're going to be covered up by the beads, which you'll see here once we get that far. But I do need it to fit into the inside of the pizza sheet. So then I'm going to take my Mod Podge. I definitely wanted to use Mod Podge on this since we did super glue the pan. I didn't want there to be any issues with using a glue stick, and I knew there would be no issues with the Mod Podge. So I just made sure I did each little section at a time, rubbed it in with my fingers. I feel like I can feel bubbles better when I do it with my fingers. So I don't always use one of those sheets unless I'm trying to really level it out, which I will do here in a second once I see some bubbles. If I'm struggling to get them out, I will use my little scraper tool. You can use a credit card, anything like that. Just make sure you get it nice and smooth, but be careful because, again, these calendar sheets are thin. And then I just do a little bit at a time until I get the whole thing on. Once it's on and I have given it plenty of time to dry, then I'm going to take my beads. They were in one of the holiday sections. I can't remember where, but it was a really good price for a huge strand of beads like this. Otherwise, I typically get them from Amazon. And I'm just making sure I can fill the whole inside of my pan. Once I do that, then I'm just cutting it off so that way I can save the rest for a future project. And then I get ready to color my beads. Now, I'm going to show you a really quick way to color your beads that some of you may already know, you may already do, you may not, but I'll explain to you how when I'm doing a lot of little pieces like this, it's a really quick way to get them all painted. So I'm using my Waverly chalk paint again in the color crimson. It's a really pretty red that I thought would be perfect on this sign. And then the other set of beads are just going to be in white. I'm going to take this little plastic looking canning jar that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to pour a little bit of red. I'm not going to start off with a lot. I'm going to pour a little bit of the red in it. Once I get the red in it, then I'm going to take a little bit of water, and I'm going to mix a little bit of water in the jar as well. I'm going to put the lid on, and I'm going to mix it all around and make sure I have mixed it up well. Once I have it all mixed up, then I am going to put my beads in the jar as well, and I'm just going to shake it around. And it's a very quick way of painting all your beads. Now, you can also use baggies. Baggies also work very well. The only ones I have right now are the fold over type, and I don't care to use those. If I'm going to do a baggie, I want it to be the type that zips. So the red that I started with was not as bright as I wanted. So I did put a little bit more in there to brighten them up a little bit. And then I shook it around again. And then I'm going to take them out. I am just going to use a toothpick and I'm going to take all the beads out and I'm going to stick the toothpicks into a little piece of floral foam that I have from the Dollar Tree. I already have it on hand. So it just made it perfect. And the nice thing about it is the wet beads, as they're drying, they don't really stick to it to where if I was to put it on paper, I worried that they would just stick to it. And then I'm going to have a bunch of spots to touch up. So once I am done doing this with the red paint, I am then going to go in with my white paint and do it with my white acrylic paint as well. It's the same apple barrel paint that I have used in other DIYs. I even used it earlier in this video. I'm just really low on my chalk paint. So this piece isn't going to be outside. I don't have to worry about it. So I figured the acrylic paint is going to be just fine on the beads. So now I'm just going to take my beads and glue them all the way around the whole pizza sheet on the inside of where the little lip is. Make sure you have the holes to the beads facing the other beads so that way you're not seeing a bunch of holes. And just glue them all the way around. I would put a little dab of the hot glue where it's going to go on the pan. And then every once in a while, I'd put a little glue where the bead is meeting the other bead as well, just to make sure they all stayed nice and tight together. And then here's where we're at. I absolutely love the way it's looking already. Then I grabbed these flowers I still had left over from the Dollar Tree from the 4th of July and a couple greenery that I already had on hand. And I'm just going to hot glue them to the top of the pan where my beads met. There was a little gap there that I didn't put an extra bead because I knew I was going to have these flowers. So I'm just going to hot glue them all in place. And then I'm going to take this nautical rope that I got from the Dollar Tree, glue it to the back of my pizza pan so I can hang it up, and we are done, folks. I love it. I am honestly in love with so many of these. And we're going to jump right into the next one. We're going to use this lemon page from one of the calendars and this picture frame that I picked up from the Dollar Tree. It is actually the perfect size for these calendar pages if you just want to use them as pictures. I wanted something a little bit more than that. Once I got the picture in the frame, I knew I didn't want it to just be a regular picture frame. I wanted to be able to do a little bit more with it. So I am taking this 5-gallon painting stick that I got from Lowe's. And a little FYI, if you go in there and ask for some, they'll usually hand you 3 or 4. and not think anything about it. So I cut it off to where there will be a little bit on each side of the picture frame. And then I'm going to just paint the whole thing in ink, my chalk paint from Waverly in the color ink. This is another really simple DIY. And I know this is a long video. Y'all, this took me so many hours to film, to edit. I cannot believe how many hours I spent in editing and then just even doing the voiceover. So I really hope you enjoy it. I really hope somebody will walk away and go make some of these. So if you do, let me know, because that will make me feel so good about all of the effort that was put into this video. I'm really hoping a lot of people benefit from it, and I hope you're enjoying it. So once I get this painted, make sure you set it aside to dry. And then I am just going to take my E6000 and hot glue to hold it in place. I don't want this going anywhere. I don't want it falling apart. My hot glue is going to give me that instant hold that I need to have it in place, especially since it's an odd shape with giving it a base. There's not really going to be an easy way to prop it up. The E6000 takes a while to dry, but it is going to give me that permanent hold. So I don't have to worry about this down the road when I change the color. Why do I keep calling them color sheets? When I change the calendar sheets out, I don't have to worry about it. This thing is sturdy, folks. So I did have to tip it up because my E6000 was going to start leaking off. So I just glued it in place into the center of the little stand that I made. So simple, so easy peasy. But the best thing I like about this is you can edit the pages out. Oh, and I did add a couple Jenga blocks to the back for extra support. I painted them. I glued them in place. I made sure I did not glue where the cardboard is so that way I can change the pictures out. I painted them black so that way they blend in. They're on the back. You don't even see them, but I did want you to see that so that way if you create this yourself, you give it that extra support as well. And I love it. You can put almost any of the pages in here and it's going to look great. You could change it out all year. I love this. So next, we are going to use this very popular pumpkin page from the calendar and one of the flat canvas panels from the Dollar Tree. I have seen a lot of DIYs with this particular page. You could tell it is well liked. You could tell it is one of the popular ones. So I wanted to come up with something different. I wanted to come up with something that you all haven't seen before. When I saw this canvas panel, I immediately knew I could do something with one of the calendar pages. I wasn't sure which one, but I decided to use this one. And on this one, because it is going on a canvas, I questioned if the glue stick would hold up, so I am using Mod Podge. So just, again, be cautious if you're using Mod Podge. Make sure you put a decent amount on there, because unfortunately you need a decent amount to make sure you hold it in place, but make sure you don't tear it. Did take my chalk paint and truffle and an elephant and kind of dry brushed both colors to the top and bottom of the panel, and they blended in with the color that frames the pumpkin really well. They just looked really well when I dry brushed both colors together. And then I'm just taking some burlap that I picked up at the Dollar Tree as well, and I am going to attach a piece of burlap to the bottom and a piece of burlap to the top of the frame to kind of frame it in so that way we can start adding more details. Next, I am going to take these 3 ribbons that I got from the Dollar Tree. And again, I am going to just make a bow similar to one I made in one of the earlier DIYs. I'm basically taking 3 like fully made bows and putting them together, but they're different sizes. So one is going to be a little bit smaller than the first one, and then the third one will be a little bit smaller than that one. And then just tie them around with some twine. I'm not too worried about that because I will be sticking something over it. Y'all, this seems like a good spot to tell you about my giveaway. That's right, I am going to be giving away 3 of the most popular calendars that I used in this video. So, how do you enter? First, you have to be subscribed to my channel. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, click the bell, get yourself notified when I upload an upcoming video. I have some fantastic things to come for the fall and Christmas seasons coming up. Second, you need to comment below in this video. Let me know that you are subscribed and let me know what your favorite DIY from this video was. I sincerely want to know that anyways. Lastly, make sure you're watching for my videos because on the 26th, I am going to upload another DIY and I'm going to let you know who the 3 winners of those calendars are. Okay, so next, those little letters, or the words, I should say, these are words, and the little pack of pumpkins and leaves that I showed you, those came from the Dollar Tree dollar spot, and they were just adorable. And then the beaded garland, of course, came from the Dollar Tree. Originally, you probably saw when I was working on my bow, I had a larger thankful sign down at the bottom, and it just seemed to like overpower the sign. So I wasn't a fan. I loved this small one that came from this Target pack. I just thought it fit perfectly, a leaf on both sides, filled it in, a pumpkin on the bow, just seemed to add a final touch to the bow, and I was just real happy how all these items came together. I just added in a little bit of extra hot glue, making sure everything was being held down, especially now that I added some weight of the wooden items. And this sign is perfect. It is good to go. I love how the finishing touches just finish the look. I love how it all goes together, and I was very happy with this. Okay, this next DIY is going to take these 3 pages from the calendar, 3 of these signs that I picked up at the Dollar Tree that they're actually for weddings. I'm going to take off the little stands that are on them on the backs of them, and then I am just going to give them a good cover of my white apple barrel paint. Again, for the most part, the sign is going to be covered in Mod Podge and the calendars, so I'm not too worried about making sure I use chalk paint. I'm more worried in just covering up these words so that way you cannot see it through my pages. So it did take 3 coats. Once my signs had plenty of time to dry, then I am just going to take the part of the calendar that I'm wanting to grab the wording from and an ink pen, and I'm just going to trace over the area that I need to cut off so that way it will fit on my sign. Now, you're going to see as I move along, you're going to see that I actually, on the others, I end up just tearing it off. I wanted this to look like a rugged outdoor sign that you're going to see because a company uses it every year at their little festival or something of that nature. Go this way to get your apples, go this way for the hay rides. I wanted it to have that outdoor rough look. So cutting it was too fine and crisp. Crisp apples. But okay, that was, my attempt at a joke there. Anyways, you will see me just tearing off the pages from this point forward and just to help give it that rough look. Then I will be Mod Podging them all in place. I'm just doing the exact same thing to all three signs from all three of the calendar pages. Now I am cutting out a couple of the trees that were on the Farm Fresh Christmas tree sign. And you do have to cut them down. So in order for to get them to fit and look halfway decent. So I am cutting them down and just kind of giving them my own tree look since you're not going to be able to have the exact image as it's printed on the calendar page. So you will see me do this for two of them, and then I will just Mod Podge them in place on the little arrow for the trees. I am going to do the exact same thing with some of the pumpkins and the apples that were on the back of the little red truck. And the apples, obviously, I'm going to stick on the crisp apples arrow. And then a couple of the pumpkins, I'm going to kind of try to trim up and put on the harvest sign. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is use a little bit of my hazelnut chalk paint and the chalk paint. Those two paints actually match the distressing on these different pages perfectly. Like I mentioned before on one of the other DIYs, these two colors just match. I rarely use the hazelnut color because it's a very unique color of brown, but it matches the distressing on this page. So I'm going to go through and dry brush around the edges and even on some of the pages a little bit more, just because I want it to really look distressed. I want it to really look like it's a sign that's been outside. I don't want the colors to get too dark, but I do want it to have a very light weathered look. Once I get the distressing done with the dry brushing, then I'm going to go in with my sandpaper. And I'm just going to clean up the edges and make sure the calendar paper is smooth on there. And then I am going to sand down over some of the distressing I did on with the paint actually. When you sand over the paint, it just color mutes the color, and I feel like it just makes it look even more weathered, so I just feel like it just helps me with the look that I'm going for. Next, I'm going to take an extra one of these signs I have from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to remove the decoration pieces, the arrow and the red truck from it so that way I can use the stake for it. I know you can buy these stakes at Lowe's or even Walmart, but why when I have extra ones? So I just used that and then hot glued my arrows in place. I am just going to be using this side indoors, so hot glue will hold it just fine. And I think it's super cute. I love how it turned out. I am decorated for Halloween right now, but as soon as we get back from vacation, I will be sticking out my fall and Thanksgiving decorations, so I know this is going to be perfect. Okay, so remember how I told you I was struggling on which one was my favorite? Oh my goodness, you guys, I am so in love with this finished sign. So I used this little Merry Christmas Santa bulb wooden decoration that I got from the Dollar Tree, along with one of the Christmas pages from one of the calendars. And I'm just creating my own, or it's still going to look like an ornament. I will be attaching even that metal piece back, but I just love it so much better. I don't know. At first, the B one was my favorite, and then the Believe in the Good one was my favorite. Um, and then I'm trying to think of which I just have gone back and forth. Oh, then the 4th of July one, which I still absolutely positively love the 4th of July. It's just not that time of the year right now, but I'm keeping that and it will go out on the 4th of July. So this one, maybe it's because it's Christmas. I'm just in love with this. It is so going to go out. I'm keeping it. You'll have to let me know what you think. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's not that great, but I really love how this looked. It just all went together perfectly. So I did hot glue the calendar sheet on this one to the bulb. It was perfectly fine since it's going on the wood. And then I'm just cutting around using my X-Acto knife. I'm just cutting the calendar sheet out around the ornament. Because this is a round ornament, it worked perfectly fine doing it this way. Then I'm just going to glue the metal piece that was the top of the ornament. I am actually just going to hot glue that back in place. There's no reason hot glue won't be a permanent enough hold on something like this because it's not really going to get moved or messed with. It's just going to be a decoration. So I am just sticking that back in place. Then I am taking my chalk paint in Spanish moss, and I am going to go around the edges of the sign. I just really wanted this sign to have a finished look. Um, and it looks really bright green for some reason in this video when I went back and replayed it, but it's really not that bright in person. And it blends in with the little greenery vines that are coming off of the calendar page. It actually blends in really well with that. Now, I did go in and sand it down to calm it down a little bit, but it blends really well. And then I am taking this lamb's ear that I pick up from Walmart. It's just too cheap at Walmart, and they're larger bunches to not get there. And I'm gluing some at the top of the bulb right under where the ornament hook is. And then the ribbon that I am going to be using, I actually did get from the Dollar Tree. And again, I'm just going to kind of create my own bow and hot glue it in place. Loving this one so much. I'm not sure why I made it the last DIY of the video. I think in the beginning I wanted to end with a bang, so I thought, ooh, I'm going to end with one that I like the most. So I hope you all stuck around long enough. I know it's an hour-long video. I hope you stuck around and were able to see this one because I love it so much. So, one trick I learned when it comes to bows is if the legs to your bows are in the way of a certain piece that you're wanting, you can actually kind of fluff them up and add a little dab of hot glue and keep it where you want to give it a certain look. So that's what you're going to see that I did here. I kind of fluffed up the ribbon a little bit, put just a dab of hot glue and glued it to the sign so that way the bow will stay perfectly where I want it. And then I noticed the one side was a little long, so I trim it up and voila, this DIY is done. It was super simple, super easy, but yet I love it so much. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're going to enter that giveaway, subscribe, and give it a thumbs up. I'll see you next time. Bye.